think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you guys. Morning to everybody out there. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where, hey, we're trying to build a liberty machine. Believe it or not, liberty is still a popular thing among the people. And we do see a little glimmers of hope for it here at the Marble Palace. We're in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd Arkansas General Assembly. Started back on the 14th of January. It looks like it's going to wrap up sometime next week, but you never know. So far for today, I know this is kind of inside baseball, but just in my little world, I was looking forward to the House Revenue and Taxation Committee meeting this morning around 10. I believe that's been canceled from what I can see. That's interesting. Also today on the House floor, they'll probably be voting on the Internet Sales Tax Bill 2.0. Of course, the Internet Sales Tax Bill, which is more money from the people of Arkansas's online purchases will cost more. That bill failed 2 years ago. They couldn't get people on board, and because of that, they took a bad piece of policy, meaning a tax increase on the people, and they combined it with corporate income tax reform, or some reform, taking the corporate income tax rate, I think, from 6.9 to 5.9, and extending some net operating loss carryover. Now, interestingly enough, if it were up to me, I would eliminate the corporate income tax altogether, and then I would stop the Arkansas Economic Development Commission from giving taxpayer money to Chinese companies with the hope that one day they will create jobs here in Arkansas. That's just me, though. That's what I would do if I were emperor and could just set the tax code however I wanted. Little glimmers of hope yesterday. The Republican State Representative Servillo, he didn't have such a good day. As I was watching from the gallery yesterday, I thought about playing that song "In the Arms of the Angel." You know what I mean? James Servillo, he was down there talking. He's trying to pass this animal cruelty bill, and I mean, I love animals. I'm not cruel to them. Well, if you count what happens, during deer season, but I mean those are clean kills. But I because deer is delicious. If you've never tried it, you should. It's delicious. Anyway, so State Representative James Servillo, he's down there, and I thought about playing that song, while he was there. In the arms of an angel. I thought it would be really funny. If there's any politicians who were in the room or state rep, you guys know that would have been pretty funny. Anyway, that bill fell. He didn't have but then here, and listen, the animal cruelty bill, it probably would have had unintended consequences, trying to ramp up the penalty for animal cruelty. I know there's a lot of people over there think it needs to be done. Listen, I once lived next door. It was so frustrating how my neighbors at one point treated their animals. I mean, it was really, really, really frustrating. So I understand that. I'm probably making light of a situation I shouldn't make light of. But anyway, the real reason I bring up James Servillo is he tried to pass yesterday another seatbelt law that would make a if you're riding in the back seat of an automobile and you don't have a seatbelt on, that would now become a primary offense. This bill got destroyed yesterday. It only had 24 yes votes. The rest of the House voted against it. And I just want to say, number one, thank you, House of Representatives, for killing a bill that, you could have easily, with pain point politics, well, what, you don't care about people's safety? You don't care about adults being formed into projectiles in a wreck and thrown out of the vehicle? Don't you think they need to have their seatbelts on in the back seat? I just think the Arkansas House yesterday on that particular bill is like, you know what, enough. Okay, we have seatbelt laws, right? We've already got seatbelt laws. We don't need to have them in the back seat too. I just think people are exhausted with this nanny statism. But it'll save life. What it's going to do is it's going to create revenue. That's what it's going to do. That's what it's designed for. It's to create revenue. And, oh, by the way, maybe we'll nudge people to put seatbelts on when they're in the back seat and they'll survive a car crash. At some point, it's my decision, right? At some point, my not having my seatbelt on doesn't affect my ability to drive a car. My not having a seatbelt on doesn't hurt anyone else. And so why does the government think they have a right to tell me to wear a seatbelt or to wear a helmet for that matter? Some of these legislators need to wear helmets because it's a contact sport down there. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. But probably the most bizarre thing that happened yesterday in Little Rock. And I'll tell you, it's not going to seem bizarre until I editorialize this for you. State Representative Jack Ladyman, who's a good guy. I agree with Jack most of the time. He had a bill that passed, HB 1942. Joe's queuing this up for me. And it is to create the sales and use tax reduction study. So it's a bill to study how they can decrease the sales and use tax. Now, some of you are probably already following my logic, but just in case, we're going to listen to this because it was good. I mean, it's a good goal, but if you have a pretty good short-term memory, this is a little confusing. Joe, go ahead. This is from yesterday.
Representative Ladyman, you recognize to present House Bill 1942. Read House Bill 1942, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1942 by Representative Ladyman to create the sales and use reduction study.
Oh, broke the mic again. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, or the need for this bill, did not come to me from a lobbyist or from a state agency. It came to me from my constituents back home in District 59 in Craighead County. And what some of my constituents said when we passed out the half-cent sales tax, or we renewed, or sent it to the folks, they asked me, well, why couldn't you come up with the money some other way rather than, renewing this tax, which was supposed to end, and I understand their frustration with that, but why couldn't you find the money for that? And I know that there are 3 or 4 people in this chamber who had alternate bills that tried to do just that. And I know some of them talked to me about good ideas that they had in those 4 bills. So I got to thinking about all those emails and phone calls that I was getting, and a lot of them said the same thing. And I thought, well, why couldn't we do that? Now, we all know that we needed the money for roads, and I voted for that, and I think we need that money, and we needed to get that going. But why can't we now, through a process, look at how we can reduce the sales tax by that half-cent that we just passed? Why can't we look at that? So what this bill does is it asks the Tax and Revenue Committee to look at how can we identify savings, growth in income, or efficiencies in state government, and 2 years from now pass a bill to reduce sales tax by 0.5%. I think that's reasonable. I think we could do that if we really put our minds to it and if we have an organized process. So what this would do, the Rev and Tax Committee would be charged with meeting on a regular basis, trying to identify savings, growth, or efficiencies, and keep a list of these things so that when we come back, or when some of us come back in 2 years, whoever's lucky enough to win their election, that they could run a bill to reduce the sales tax. I think we could do that, and this is an organized way to do it. So that's why I propose this bill. I think it's a good thing. I think it's responsive to what our people back home want us to do, and I, for one, want to try to do that. And I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone had one.
For what purpose, Representative Fight?
Question.
To recognize.
Thank you. Representative Ladyman, we just had a task force finish up a complete study of all of these matters. How would this differ?
Good question.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, because I thought about that myself. I think the difference here is that this is a focused attempt. I look at this like an engineering project that I've been charged with things like this in the past, where somebody tells you, you have to save this much money. In this case, it'd be around $210 million. So how are you going to do that? Where can you save that money? So it's focused on that one thing. It's not a general study like you referred to that committee or that workforce. They looked at the whole tax system. This is very specific. Our goal is to reduce sales tax by 0.5%. How do we get there? So I think that's the difference.
For what purpose, Representative Collins?
Question.
You recognize for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, would it be within the scope of this to look at our very low property tax collections as a way to offset the sales tax you're talking about?
That's a Democrat. You
Well,
got
I
to
think
always be
everything
able
should
to
on the
offset.
table. I think we should look at everything. I don't think this should be tax neutral. I think it ought to be a reduction in the cost of state government. So I don't think we ought to look at increasing other tax to get this tax. We should look very specifically how we can save money, make government more efficient, and let our folks keep more of their money. I would appreciate.
All right, so you guys get the gist. All right, go ahead and stop, Joe. So that was State Representative Jack Ladyman. Okay, now, like I said, I mean, any effort by these guys to attempt to reduce the sales tax by 0.5 cent, I think is a good idea. I'm going to support it. Okay, but if you heard there, State Representative Ladyman also said that referenced the fact that the body just passed tax increases to fund roads. And now they want to study and find out how to decrease those taxes. Does anybody find that just a little bit counterproductive? I mean, look, I know we're trying to stop the bleeding. What it does definitely say is that Republicans are not supposed to vote for tax increases. I mean, that's essentially what it's telegraphing. Okay, maybe we should have found a way to not increase the tax this time, and we should have looked at the savings that we could have had now. Like, well, why didn't we do that now? And by the way, State Representative Charlene Fight's question there pretty much exposes the futility of the task force on tax relief, doesn't it? Didn't we just have a task force on tax relief to discover these issues? Yeah, we did. And guess what? We raised taxes on everybody. We cut everyone's income tax. Well, we cut, the top tier income tax 2 years from now. And now we're raising gas tax by October. And they're about to vote to raise the internet sales tax in July of this year. So no one cares about what their taxes are going to be a year from now or 2 years from now. They care what their taxes are going to be this year. I just find the whole thing like it was said to me that this bill, the passage of this bill to create a study to lower the sales tax by 0.5% by finding $200 million in savings. By the way, this is something that is easily done. You can find $200 million in savings. There just is not the will. Governor Asa Hutchinson doesn't want to do that. There's not the political will to do it. I don't think nephew number one has the political will to do it, and so it's not going to get done. But if you've already, so the full House voted yesterday overwhelmingly to support this, and now the full House previously voted to increase the tax. Isn't that kind of like a shot and then taking a chaser? Was yesterday really the chaser? So we all take a shot, right? They all take a shot the other day when they're, passing the half-cent sales tax increase, or they're not going to let it expire, right? We've got to vote on it, right? We got to have more money. We're taking the shot. We're we're creating a brand new tax going around the Constitution, taking a shot. And now we've got the chaser. I just find the whole thing really frustrating. Again, I support what State Representative Jack Ladyman is doing. Obviously, okay, any effort to try to go in the wrong back in the right direction to correct what's wrong. I just am frustrated by it because you guys have constitutional authority now. And again, but if you don't have conservatives, and I mean actual conservatives who've read a book about limited government and actually agree with it, then if you don't have those guys who are in leadership, then we're going to have a hard time. We're going to have a hard time. And that's what we have right now. We have people that they don't believe in what they campaign on. If the bureaucrats present them with the right information, present them with the right doom and gloom scenario. Okay, you know what? Let me just go over something with you here, because I just want to make my point a little bit better. All right. So this is just a few of the things that have happened this session, and I'm going to go over the good and the bad. All right. When it comes to you and the money that you have to spend to give government, they raised your bill on gasoline and diesel. Okay, that's a done deal. They raised your cell phone bill, your cell phone tax. That's happening. They raised your water bill. If they vote on the internet sales tax today, they're going to have raised your internet purchases. They raised the cigarette bill for that UAMS bill. So they raised, if you smoke cigarettes, you're going to pay more. They also are continuing this half-cent sales tax, which is set to expire according to law. So that's a new tax. So they raised all your purchases. If they would have left it alone, your sales tax would have decreased, and so all your purchases would have been. So they raised all of your purchases. They rejected yesterday to lower the used car bill, or basically increase the tax exemption for used cars on sales tax. They did lower your income tax bill by $95 million at some point in the future, but that's not going to be this year. They raided the property. Did they raid the property? Did they go ahead and raid the property tax relief trust fund? They did improve campus free speech. That's good. They killed most scope of practice bill improvements. The medical society absolutely thwarted at every turn any attempt to try to give the people more freedom and more choice. And the optometry bill is really the only one that was able to beat the medical society, from what I can tell. They increased spending. They ignored the Medicaid expansion work requirements going away. Well, they paid attention on Friday. Oh, by the way, do you know Davy Carter? I make this tweet. I said it on the radio yesterday. I made a tweet 2 days ago that the reason the courage of the Arkansas House failed from Friday in rejecting the Medicaid expansion budget to a day ago was because there was a rumor started that former Speaker of the House, Davy Carter, was going to show up and make them vote again. And do you know who came on the House floor yesterday? Former House Speaker Davy Carter. So I guess the rumor was true. He was recognized in front of everybody. I had no advance knowledge that Speaker Carter I'm not the NSA. I had no idea he was going to be there. And see, it's little things like that give me hope. Because when you've got providence, when you've got comical providence that is happening, it's like, okay, that's just a little wink there. All right, we're going to take a break. You are listening to Conduit News Radio. My name is Paul Harrell. We'll be back here in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
If you're listening to this program, well, thank you for listening to this program. Please tell your friends about Conduit News Radio. You can find out more at conduitnews.com. Folks, there's a group out there called the Patriots Vac 746, and you've heard me at this point talk about them a bunch. I want to commend them for the work they've done. I want to tell you that if you want to be a part of a grassroots organization that is focusing on your Second Amendment rights, your rights here in the state of Arkansas specifically, your liberty when it comes to, honestly, Thomas Jefferson said an educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of government. I think it's maybe I botched that a little bit, but it's indispensable. And so we got to have people out there educated. And
who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP parody.
That's what the Patriots Vac 746 is there for. They're advocating it.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
As some people asking me, what do you think the House is going to do today when it comes to the internet sales tax? I mean, they're going to pass it. That's what they're going to do. I mean, I hope they don't. But I mean, you've got a situation that's pretty straightforward. Okay. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. You have internet sales tax, which is a new tax on the people. Say it's not a new tax. It's already owed as a use tax. Well, it's a new use tax. It's a sales tax on out-of-state sellers. The Supreme Court said you can now do it. If it's not a new tax, then why do we need this piece of legislation to get more money to the government? Period. So, end of story. If it's not a new tax, why do we need the legislation? Why can't you collect it now? Oh, that's right. You're not going to go to every house in Arkansas and make everybody mad, and there's too much of a political risk if you do it that way. So it is a new tax, but they've put all this corporate welfare in there. I'm sorry, they've put all this corporate tax reform in there. Corporate tax reform is also in the bill. And so the Chamber of Commerce and the Municipal League have told these guys this is their number one priority now. All of a sudden, at the very end of the session, the Chamber of Commerce's number one priority is an internet sales tax bill that lowers the corporate tax and extends, net operating loss carryover. So I just think that, once again, now, I mean, the House could still reject it and say, we don't appreciate being put in this position. We don't appreciate something that we hate. It's something that we like. But that's the way this administration has operated in the past, and that's how they get government to grow, is to do this type of stuff. That's what the Patriots Fact 746 is there for. They're advocating and educating about, the fact that we're a constitutional carry state, which means that you don't have to have a permit to carry a gun, open or concealed, here in the state of Arkansas. And if you want to know more, go to the Patriots Fact 746 Facebook page. You go to Facebook, you search for Patriots Fact 746 and ask to become a member of the group. It's a closed group, but they'll grant you access, and then you're going to have access to a whole plethora of people who are on it. Then you probably need to go to one of their meetings. Matter of fact, here to talk more about that, as always, we got Tim Loggins on the line. Tim, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm very weary, at times because I've been, covering this 92nd General Assembly for a while now, since January 14th, and it's kind of dragging on, and I'm wondering, what are they going to try to do at the last minute? But for the most part, I'm optimistic, and just want to give people the truth. That's what I'm optimistic about, Tim. Is I just want to give people the truth of what's happening and just kind of let the chips fall where they may at this point. And Tim, I know you've been covering all of this gun legislation since this is all kicked off.
I've been trying to. There's been so much. It's hard to keep track of, but we're doing the best we can, and had pretty good results so far.
Yeah, obviously we've got the victories for the constitutional carry, clarifying gun rights. That's fantastic. Where you have both houses basically, making sure everybody knows about a 2013 law that essentially, a court case and a 2013 law that essentially affirms our right to open carry or concealed carry without a permit, without a permission slip from the government. And that's a big deal. There's a big difference, Tim, between being pro-gun and pro-permit or concealed carry permit, isn't there?
Huge difference, Paul. There's still some bad gun bills out there that are coming down, this week or next week. Two of them come to mind, SB 660. It's an attempt by Senator Garner to clean up the so-called enhanced carry law and to modernize, I believe is the title, the concealed carry handgun license law. It's a bad bill. Again, it's the ideology of you need a permit. And there's another one by Senator Trent Garner's, SB 223, which grants a waiver to people, an emergency to get a license, someone that's a victim of domestic abuse. And, I'd like to call on Senator Garner right now to pull that bill and hold a press conference and say, hey, guys, I filed this.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we are. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, coming up at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Josh Miller about his bill that would have ended the private option Arkansas Works program, and it would have put it into traditional Medicaid. Amazingly, I sat down with Josh yesterday to record this interview, and you're going to like what he has to say because, normally, just like always, Josh Miller doesn't pull any punches, just let you know exactly how he feels. We brought you that audio yesterday from the House Public Health Committee, and this bill was a great bill. It's common sense, and honestly, folks, this bill saves the taxpayer an enormous amount of money, but it takes it takes a lot of money away from Blue Cross Blue Shield. From what we can tell, and I think this is a conservative estimate, but if the private option Arkansas Works Obamacare Medicaid expansion, if that version were to end today, Blue Cross Blue Shield would lose $400 million a year. That's their profit. Okay, they're making no. It's a $2 billion program, and the law said. Now, listen to this. A lot of people don't realize this, but the original legislation from 2013 mandated that Blue Cross Blue Shield must spend 80% of the money they get from the government to pay for these insurance policies, 80% of it has to be used for health care. So 20% of it is their profit. Well, 20% of $2 billion is $400 million. Now, you might ask yourself, because I was telling somebody this the other day, yesterday, in fact, they said, oh, well, so are they not, what are they? Are they not doing the 80%? Is that what it is? They're not really. No. We're assuming that Blue Cross Blue Shield is following the law. We're assuming that all of the money they get, that 80% of it goes to pay for, people's health care, and the 20% is theirs. We're assuming that that's the case. But do you know that we have no way to verify whether or not they're complying with that 80-20 rule? I mean, it's in the original piece of legislation, and it's also in the carryover for Arkansas Works and that program. But we have no way to assure that the corporate welfare we're providing them is that ratio that's in the law is being followed. We have no way. And so when I realized this, I finally found the line. Ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to Medicaid expansion in the great state of Arkansas, I finally found the line. If you've been listening to the program for a while, you will remember that one of the things I've said consistently about socialized medicine, when it comes to the fascist way that the Arkansas government has done this, and it is a type of fascism because they're not taking over Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're just manipulating. Actually, it's kind of the other way around. Blue Cross Blue Shield kind of controls the state of Arkansas. But one of my biggest critiques is that the line between government and private entity is getting blurry. And you can't tell where the government ends and Blue Cross Blue Shield begins. You can't tell because they're all in bed with one another. Matter of fact, if we went full socialized medicine and we wanted to take care of everybody in Arkansas and guarantee everybody in Arkansas health care like they try to do in Massachusetts, if we did that, the executives at Blue Cross Blue Shield would have jobs. They would just get absorbed into the Arkansas Department of Health Care. You know what I mean? Likewise, this would happen if we ever did this nationwide. The people at the insurance companies are going to be made happy so that they keep their mouths shut about socialism. But where is the line? I found the line where you can tell the difference between the government and the difference between Blue Cross Blue Shield, specifically when it comes to Medicaid expansion, private option, using taxpayer dollars to give away to insurance companies. I've found the line. Do you know where the line is? The line is when Arkansas cuts Blue Cross Blue Shield a check. Because when we give them that money, we have no control over it after that. Boom, there's the line. And we have no way of figuring out if they're actually giving 80%, as the law says. Are they giving 80% towards health care and 20% profit? We don't even know. We're assuming that they're doing that. So the assumption from Josh Miller in that testimony, we're going to hear from Josh again at 7:05. The assumption from Josh Miller is that they are keeping 20% profit as the law provides. That's $400 million right there that we would save if we just move this population to fee for service. Why did the bill fail? Why did this bill that saved taxpayer money fail? Josh Miller 2 days ago got 9 votes out of that committee. He needed 2 more. Conveniently, he had 11 going in. I know he had 11 votes going in. I can report to you, State Representative Josh Miller in committee had his 11 votes that he needed to advance this bill out of committee. He had them. What happened? Did everybody stay in that committee room the whole time? That'd be the first question I would ask. Did everyone stay in the committee room the whole time? Did anyone get up at any point during that committee and leave the committee room? And did they have any conversations with anyone that changed their mind on that particular piece of legislation that that makes perfect sense? Folks, it doesn't take anyone's health care away. And listen, this is how far left we've gone when we have one of the most conservative state reps in the entire state running a bill to keep Obamacare Medicaid expansion, but just to take it away from the insurance companies and let's treat them just like we treat the truly needy who are already in Medicaid. Do you understand how crazy that is? That's like legislative jiu-jitsu. When you have State Representative Josh Miller at the end of the table running a Medicaid expansion bill, something he said he would never support, but he is, because fiscally it's the right thing to do by the taxpayers at this point. Yes, it solidifies the program even more, but it's not going away even right now. Should we continue to give the insurance companies $2 billion a year? And then they take some of that money and tithe it back to the political establishment's political action committees to keep guys in office who continue to grow government. Folks, this is a giant scam. The links of which the average person has no idea. The people who only listen to the traditional statewide media outlets. You're listening right now to a non-traditional statewide media personality. But those who listen to the traditional statewide media, they don't understand that this was a giant scam. And then you figure out, well, hang on a second, Paul. What if Blue Cross Blue Shield's making all this money? How come they keep coming back to the state of Arkansas every year and asking for more money? Well, I don't know. Maybe because you keep giving it to them and you keep trusting all of their bogus numbers. I mean, why does a child go back to their parent and ask for more money? Why does the child continue to use a credit card when they're not supposed to? It's because you're stupid enough to have given them a credit card. That's why. Well, why would you trust the insurance companies at this point? The average citizen doesn't trust the insurance company. I mean, let me to ASA and to all of the establishment out there, you realize the average citizen right now that has an insurance policy is just waiting to get railroaded at some point in their life by the insurance company. You realize that, right? Like everybody walking around me like, oh my gosh, I hope my health insurance will cover this. Oh, okay, they covered it. I still had to have it. But everybody, no one trusts the insurance companies. At any moment, we're scared to death that they're going to cancel our coverage, or they're going to say, well, technically, under Regulation A-B-C, you signed this policy, and now we can cancel your coverage. Everybody's terrified of that. And because so why would the state of Arkansas trust the insurance company when they come back after they're already getting $2 billion and they're making at least $400 million of the year that we know about according to statute? Why would you trust them when they say, we're going to need to raise rates, we need more money? Why would you trust them? Why? They're going to give you can make a budget, and you know what? People in government, you guys know that. You can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. You can make your budget say whatever it is you want it to say. And that's what they've done. I mean, that's what Paul Gehring did from DFNA. Well, he just ignored his own numbers and then insinuated something that was factually inaccurate. And I don't think that was an accident. That was a different issue. Well, actually, it was the internet sales tax, which we're going to talk about. Well, the House is going to vote on it. I'm telling you right now, if my sources are accurate, State Representative Josh Miller had the votes. He had the votes. He had the votes to put this state on a trajectory that is the opposite of where we're going. I found it so ironic that the very next day, Speaker of the House, Davy Carter, is in the chamber. By the way, after I comically just made a joke about him on Twitter the day before. But you know what a big deal it is? And I hope people on the House Public Health Committee are listening to this. Speaker Davy Carter is a huge reason why this state is in the position that it's in right now. If Speaker Davy Carter had never been Speaker and Terry Rice had been Speaker, Senator Rice, as he was the guy next in line, but he was too conservative for Mike Beebe, so there was a mutiny in the Republican Party, and all the Democrats voted for Davy, and a few Republicans voted for Davy. If that hadn't happened, our state would be a completely different state right now. I want you to understand that. So Davy Carter being honored, and it was just, he was just recognized. It's just common courtesy. It wasn't like it was out of place. He was at the Capitol that day. He was in there to say hi. It was a courtesy. But it dawned on me. I said, gosh, that is so, that is amazing. Now, listen, everything happens for a reason. But I'm just telling you right now, the fact that Josh Miller was trying to put us on a trajectory to put things back the way they were just a day before is striking to me. Striking in its irony, the opposite of truth. If Josh Miller ran that bill and he thought he had the votes, he had assurances from committee members that he had 11 yes votes to advance this out of committee to save the taxpayer money. And then all of a sudden, he only gets 9. That's very sad to me. Because this is about taking away money from Blue Cross Blue Shield that they don't need, nor are they entitled to. And this is what happens. I mean, this is corporate welfare at its highest. The fact that all those Democrats on that committee voted against Josh Miller's bill, why would they do that? Why would all the Democrats vote? They're supposed to hate private companies. They're supposed to hate corporate welfare, yet all of the Democrats voted against Josh Miller's bill as well as some Republicans. Why? Why is that? He was giving the Democrats exactly what they wanted, which was fee-for-service Medicaid expansion, which is exactly what Barack Obama put in his bill. And yet they said, no, we're going to keep giving away money to insurance companies to pay for people's policies, regardless of whether they go to the doctor or not. That's the big crux here. Why is Medicaid expansion under the private option, Arkansas Works, so more expensive? It's much more expensive because we're paying $600 a month per person. The governor says there's 235,000 people on the program. I heard a number yesterday that there's actually 270 on the program. I don't know which one it is, but you do the math. 270 times 600. That's how much it costs a month. In 1 month. It's no wonder Josh Miller only got 9 votes when he had 11. If you're making that much money a month, you'll find a way to get state representative, whoever, who committed to change their mind. And it's the way things work down there at the Marble Palace. They say they care about your money, and sometimes they do. Most of the time, they don't. It's Republicans gone wild down there. That's what I think. Let me go back over this list. Right now, they're looking to change term limits. They want to move it from 16 to 12. Now, there's mixed feelings on that. Originally, this bill... it was on Conduit's scorecard as an oppose. After that, Alan Clark, Senator Clark, amended his bill, took out a lot of the issues that I had with it. They passed some good pro-life legislation. They really did. That was some of the best. For me, I will tell you, the pro-life legislation was some of the best moments of this 92nd General Assembly, just because of the unity that it did provide in the Republican Party, minus Dan Douglas. They raised the age to smoke, which is ridiculous, and nobody was clamoring for that. They ignored the Medicaid expansion work requirements going away and just decided to pass the budget anyway. They've increased spending. They've killed most scope of practice improvements by listening to the medical societies complaining and moaning. Is that the phrase? Complaining and moaning? Something tells me that's not the phrase. Let's see. They did improve campus free speech. They lowered income taxes eventually, but it doesn't go into effect for 2 years. They rejected helping lower income families buy used vehicles. They raised your sales tax on all purchases. They raised your cigarette bill. They raised your internet purchases. They raised your water bill. They raised your phone bill. They raised your gasoline bill. What is going on? I mean, there certainly is some positive things. They also couldn't pass a stand your ground bill, which is frustrating. And they couldn't pass a get rid of gun-free zones bill, which is frustrating. So, I mean, honestly, from what I can tell, if I were to, and I haven't actually looked at the Republican Party platform to have it in front of me, but just going over that list of good and bad, I think we have a Republican Party in control of this state that only has the will to enact about 20% of the platform. That's what from what I can tell. We only, I mean, we may campaign on the full 100% platform, because I don't think they're going to get school choice out either. I hope they do. But it looks like we're only a state that we're like 30% Republican. I'll go up to 30% when it comes to enacting the changes that we want. And you say, well, why do we need these changes, Paul? We're a Republican state. Well, we haven't been for very long. Respectively, the Democrats had control of 138 years. So that's the issue here. You want to know why they're raising all those taxes? I'll tell you why. It's because we got to have money to pay Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's the bottom line. You want to know the albatross around this state's neck since 2013? We have to position ourselves to raise taxes, but tell the people we cut them so we can pay a private insurance company taxpayer money. Almost everything they do, from a leadership standpoint, to control the outcome, to get a predetermined result, is so they can cut a check of your money to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they maneuver and they position in order to do that. And I have been saying this since 2013. I have been saying tax increases are coming because of what they did. People ignored me. People ignored Conduit News and our coverage of this. They don't want to hear the truth, and that's fine. That doesn't change the reality. You may not like the truth. It doesn't change the reality that you're going to have to face it someday. And Josh Miller is somebody who's faced the truth. Of course, you know, he's always been on my page. But what I mean by that is Josh Miller has conceded. Josh Miller, we're going to listen to the interview here in a minute. State Representative Josh Miller conceded. He said, you know what? Medicaid expansion's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. There's no way we can get rid of it. So if we can't get rid of it, might as well do it as cheaply as possible. Let's take the money from the insurance companies and let's put them in traditional Medicaid, and let's only pay when they go to the doctor. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
This back when it was unclear, but now we have the law. You don't need a permit, victims of domestic violence. You can carry a handgun right now. You don't need a permit. You don't need the government's permission. Things like that, Paul, we've been fighting as much as we've been fighting for good legislation, making sure that we don't lose any ground and that we spread this message. No permit is needed to carry a weapon, concealed or unconcealed. Trent Garner wants to be a Second Amendment advocate. Then get on board with what the law says. Let's quit misleading people.
You know, that one about if you're a victim of domestic violence, you get a fast-track concealed carry permit. That was fascinating to me, considering I'm pretty sure when Scott Flippo's resolution to clarify gun rights, I think Trent voted for that.
That is correct, Paul. And you want to talk about mixed messages. Are you for the people's right to keep and bear arms? Do you believe in Article 2, Section 5 of the Arkansas?
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we'll be talking. We got a lot to get to in the next hour, by the way. We're also going to be talking about there's a kind of a flashback situation from the special session. I guess, what was this, a year or so ago? We'll be talking about this case. Mike Masterson wrote a good piece about this in the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette about a man by the name of Kenneth Tilley and the issues he's been going through with his bank because there was some legislation by former Senator indicted Jeremy Hutchinson that changed some language that essentially has made his life very, very difficult. We'll be talking with Joey McCutcheon, attorney, about that case and just how, you know what, these folks who are passing these laws, we have to live under them. We're the ones that have to live under them. And they pass these laws for special interests, and they make our lives worse sometimes. Speaking of making our lives worse, we have the internet sales tax vote today on the floor of the House of Representatives. This is essentially a mandate from the governor's office. It has been this entire session because the governor has already put it in the budget. And that's what was so funny is he put the revenue increase from the sales from the internet sales tax in his budget, and yet people want to talk about, well, maybe we can use the tax money for tax relief in the future. Like, well, maybe we can use the money and give it back to the people. It's like, well, no, he's already spent the money. It's in his budget. So this is something that's just been told that's going to happen. Now, if the House were to somehow reject this, it would be huge. If the House of Representatives were to somehow reject the internet sales tax, reject this tax increase on the people, and say enough is enough. We passed your income tax cuts, and now we've raised all these taxes everywhere else to offset because everything we do have to offset. Let me tell you this right now. The numbers are clear. It is not an offset. This is a net tax increase until 2027. Look at the numbers. They're available. And the House of Representatives should not feel good about voting for this bill, even if there is some corporate reform in it.
The news and talk of North Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Constitution. Do you believe Act 746 did what the Senate and the House voted in that resolution to say it did, which you don't need a permit? Do you believe that or not? And if you do believe it, does that mean that you're trying to change it? Paul, let's be honest with folks. Let's stop the manufactured confusion. I call on Senator Garner to pull SB 223, and I call on him to pull SB 660. The enhanced carry license is unconstitutional. It violates Article 2, Section 2, Article 2, Section 5. It's a bad bill. Article 2, Section 18. These are attempts by the establishment to continue this CHCL program, and we need to stop that. You don't need a permit in Arkansas.
We also don't need anything that could remotely weaken the status, the freedom that the people have right now when it comes to open carry and concealed carry. And that's, to me, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the session now, a week away or so, you never know, right? I mean, I know one thing, Tim. The establishment, the people in positions of power, they might not admit it openly. Not all of them, but they. I'm talking about Arkansas State Police, the Sheriff's Association. They don't like the fact that the people have the freedom right now to carry a gun without checking it with the government first.
Well, I don't think they like it, Paul, but they understand the law. We were down at the Capitol Monday. We had Matt, I believe his name was Moser, with the National Association of Gun Rights. They're coming into Arkansas.
Really?
Yes, sir. They reached out to us last week and said, hey, we don't really have a presence in Arkansas. We would like to establish one. And so we talked to them a little bit, and we met their representative, Matt, at the Capitol Monday, and introduced him to a great number of legislators. And, Paul, we seem to think that legislators aren't on board with this, but we met probably 60 or more legislators Monday. Every one of them was shaking our hands, and every one of them acknowledged 746, constitutional carry. Every one of them, we're on board with what we're doing, friendly, open arms, establishing those relationships. We're making a big difference. Lawmakers know what 746 did in 2013. And, I talked about Senator Garner's bad bills that appear to be good. We've defeated a lot of legislation. Representative Garner's filed 3 bills that basically are taking steps backwards on our gun rights. We defeated the red flag law. We've defeated some bad legislation, and the legislators are on board with that. They understand that Arkansas, and Arkansans cherish their gun rights.
Hey, will you remind us? That's a big deal, and we do need to give the legislature credit there. Thank them for defeating the red flag legislation. This was something that the governor came out and said he was open to late last year, that he was open to red flag laws. It's funny, interesting. It would have been very interesting to see what would have happened if he would have said that or taken that position during his Republican primary against Jan Morgan. If he'd have come out and said, I'm for red flag laws. Tim, remind us of how many rights in the Bill of Rights a red flag law violates.
Top of my head, Paul, 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 14th, and possibly more. That's just top of my head.
That's incredible.
Direct violation. Yeah, and it's crazy to think that we were that close to having red flag in Arkansas, and it's pretty interesting. Matt's headquartered out of Colorado, Matt Moser, with National Association of Gun Rights, and Colorado just enacted red flag laws. That was a huge defeat for the citizens of Colorado. And Matt was concerned Arkansas was going to, accept the red flag laws as well, and I think Arkansas pleasantly surprised him to see what grassroots efforts have done in the state.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, and that's really what it's been. And I know you guys have had your Patriots, VAC 746 meetings. There was one this past Saturday in Conway. I understand that was a success. I know you head up the Northeast Arkansas chapter. You got any meetings coming up that the folks need to know about, Tim?
I don't have the schedule in front of me, Paul, but, last weekend we had Senator Mark Johnson and Representative Spencer Hawks and Representative Meeks. They came to the meeting. 50-plus folks there in Conway, showed up to learn about their gun rights. We have one basically every weekend somewhere in Arkansas. Join the page. you can get the schedule that way. And it's just grassroots folks. It's everyday folks. And Paul, we're having I can't tell you the success and how exciting the times are. You know, in addition to meeting all the legislators Monday, you know, we met with them.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. This is hour number 2. Man, I'm telling you, it's a pretty exciting couple of days. Everything's moving at pretty fast pace. People trying to get stuff done because the 92nd General Assembly, the session is really less than a week away now of ending, according to what I've been told. So definitely want to bring you up to speed on everything. We're going to be talking a little bit with Mr. Joey McCutcheon at the bottom of the next hour. The big news today is the House is voting on the internet sales tax. That's right. They want to pass a tax and raise the prices on everything you buy online. We'll talk more about that later in the hour as well. But Republicans shouldn't feel good about this. I know there's corporate tax reform in there. That's what they've done. This is the veterans' tax relief with tax increases all over again from 2 years ago. They know you don't support taxing the people more. They know you don't support taking more money out of their pockets, and yet they put the little corporate tax reform in there, a little mild reform, and then here you go. And look, it's just not right. Just the bottom line, it's just not right. But this is the position they've put you in. The House of Representatives could easily reject this. Okay, this isn't going to help small businesses who are brick and mortar because it's just giving more money to the government. And yet the Chamber of Commerce, once again, wants more money from the people. The Municipal League wants more money from the people. It's just sad. And by the way, this is what you need to know, Republicans. The bottom line is this. The DFNA's numbers are wrong. They have misled you. They have a financial impact statement that's a phony one way or the other. But by their own admission at this point, it's a phony one way or the other because it's a DFNA financial impact statement from an old bill. It's from an older bill, a draft piece of legislation that didn't have the same language that generates revenue as it does. And so, okay, so that's either flawed. Well, now DFNA is saying, well, no, our statement was actually for that bill, but we went ahead and scored it for language that wasn't in the original bill back during the task force. Well, okay, well, that's weird then too. Why would you have a fight? See, their story doesn't make any sense, okay? Period. So the fact of the matter is, if you look at DFNA's own numbers, this is a net tax increase on the people of Arkansas. It doesn't balance out until all of the corporate income tax kicks in. And that's not going to happen for several years. Do not buy the lie and do not feel good about voting for this. That's why you should vote against it. Folks, I sat down with State Representative Josh Miller yesterday. It was a great interview. Joe's got it queued up. You want to listen to this about his bill to attempt to, transfer folks over to the traditional Medicaid, which is the reason why they're raising your taxes, or they're going to try to raise your taxes later today, is because of what we're talking about right here. So it's important to know the context here. Listen to this.
Here with State Representative Josh Miller. Josh, how you doing?
Doing well, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so your bill, House Bill 1929, was actually, let's just go ahead and say it. You're pro-Medicaid expansion now.
Well, it makes me sick in my stomach a little bit to say that, but I was willing to say if we're going to have Medicaid expansion, let's do it the most efficient and affordable way possible. And the private insurance model is not it, and it's it's killing our state.
Yeah, it's unsustainable. I think it's unsustainable with the work requirements or without, but regardless of that happening, the bill yesterday in committee failed. And were you surprised by that? Did you think that maybe some of the Democrats, the Democrats voting against this is pretty fascinating because, this should be what they want.
I was really surprised that every single Democrat in the House Public Health Committee voted against pure Obamacare Medicaid expansion. I don't know if that means they're really conservative or they just like wasting more of the taxpayers' money. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we were just talking earlier before the interview about Blue Cross Blue Shield and the amount of money that they're making off the taxpayer, really just the amount of money they're making, period. I don't know if we could point to any other entity that's making as much money as the insurance companies are.
There's not one. I believe every business in the state of Arkansas, if they knew that they could get a government contract that's worth $2 billion a year, knowing that they're going to make 20% of their income, they're going to have a 20% profit margin. I believe that all of us would jump on that. And that's exactly what's happening here. And when you got $2 billion being spent a year, that equates to $400 million that is being made either as administrative cost or I just call it profit because that's what it is.
Yeah. Again, we're talking with State Representative Josh Miller. It's about his bill that failed in committee that would have taken us from the private option model where we're giving insurance companies all this money to a fee-for-service, a Medicaid expansion that's much cheaper because right now, Josh, we're paying almost $600 a month per person, regardless of whether or not they go to the doctor. Now, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, it would be cheaper, but the committee wasted no time in getting some DHS officials down at the end of the table to answer the questions of some of the committee. How did you think that process went?
Well, I needed a gas mask and firefighting hazmat material because of the amount of feces and smoke and mirrors and everything that was spewed out. Just basically a bunch of bull crap that was put out by a member of DHS simply because I guess maybe who they work for or whatever. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to do it. Maybe it makes no sense. There were several good questions asked by committee members, both that were for the bill and some that voted against the bill. They asked good, legitimate questions, and they got smoke and mirrors for answers. There was not one question answered by DHS that was just given a very straightforward and simple answer. And it's bullcrap, man. That's a government agency answering to a legislative committee, and they had an agenda. And again, they just filled the room with smoke.
Yeah, it's really sad because this is taxpayer money at this point. And matter of fact, if you go watch the video, I feel like their arguments, they were exposed if you could read between the lines and you can, listen to what was going on. This would save taxpayer money. Now, at one point, there was the question of access to care that was brought up, like what happens to this expansion population if they transition out of the private insurance model and go to the fee-for-service traditional Medicaid. And I thought to myself, hang on, wait a second. That's the moral low ground, because if Medicaid expansion fee-for-service is good for the most truly needy people in our state, why wouldn't it also be good for the expanded population who are able to work adults, some of whom choose not to work, right? Why even ask that question?
Because you're grasping for a reason to oppose when there's not a legitimate one out there. That's the only reason I could come up with. Also, and I mentioned this yesterday, by doing the private option model for the expansion population, we have created a two-tier class system of Medicaid recipients. Those who are able-bodied, working-age adults, many of whom who are not working, not hitting a lick at a snake at all, they have better insurance, are able to receive better care, and have better access to care than do our most vulnerable, our disabled, our elderly, our medically frail, who are on traditional Medicaid because of the number of healthcare providers who are not seeing new Medicaid patients anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not right. I mean, it's like, why are we going to take these folks and put them out here on a much better plan than what we're going to do for our most vulnerable?
Yeah.
And you know, it really sucks, and we've got to. I mean, that's a moral aspect of the deal. The other deal is the mathematics of the matter, and numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. You know, when you only have to spend 80% of your revenue on paying for medical expenses, then you have 20% that you can spend.
And that 20%, what's that dollar figure come out to?
Well, like I said, right now, you figure we're roughly spending $2 billion a year. So 20% of $2 billion is $400 million. Next year, when the state is paying 10% of the cost of this program, if costs don't go up any more than they already are, then we're going to spend $40 million out of state revenue just paying the insurance company's profit margin. Mm-hmm. That doesn't go to take care of one sick person or one person in need of health care. And that's just stupid. It's stupid.
So, Arkansas Works requirement struck down by a judge. What do you think about that news? And what do you think about the budget? On Friday, enough of you and your colleagues had the courage to vote the appropriation down to get their questions answered. I'm told that there really weren't any public assurances given. It was all done behind closed doors to get the 75 votes that were needed. What do you think about that whole process and the work requirements being struck down?
Well, it does. You know, it's a bad deal that the work requirements were struck down. That was the one little shining glimmer of conservatism in Arkansas Works was the work requirements. That judge in D.C. obviously sucks and needs to be replaced. But, you know, even with the work requirements in place, we're still talking about 270,000 people that we're going to cover. We've had the work requirements in place for however long now. Our numbers are 270-something thousand that we're still covering. And why not do it more efficiently and more affordably when there's a better plan?
Do you think now that the work requirements are struck, the portal online is shut down? I mean, if I were Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'd be calling every single person whose health care was that was canceled because their insurance policy was canceled, get them to sign back up. This program could easily balloon back up to 330,000.
I believe that in the next few months, you're definitely going to see 20 to 30,000 people be added back to the rolls that we're going to be paying $570-something a month for, whether they go to the doctor or not. There's no doubt, just like what you said, we've turned this over to the private companies. The private companies are making money, so obviously they're going to rush out here. They'll spend $1 million in a heartbeat to make 20 or 30 million more.
Yeah. To lobby people to spend money to make sure the program never goes away.
Or no, just to reach out to folks that were on the program. I mean, send them mailers, call them, do whatever, go track them down. Mm-hmm. That makes good business sense. Mm-hmm. And they know, hey, we're going to make 20% on everyone that we sign up. It's the dumbest thing in the world for the state to be doing. You know, you look around the other states, there's 30-something other states that have expanded Medicaid. Why is Arkansas the only one doing it like this?
Yeah.
That's a question I raise. We're not the only. I love Arkansas, and I'm proud to be an Arkansan, but we are leading the way in how to expand Medicaid stupidly.
And that's funny you say that, because you have Kentucky, they expanded Medicaid, then they get a Republican governor, says he wants to get rid of it, but then he ends up compromising and doing work requirements. You could still do some form of work requirements with traditional Medicaid, because Kentucky didn't decide to give $2 billion to insurance companies. Now, on that point, we're talking with State Representative Josh Miller. We're kind of backing up a little bit. You talked about the truly needy. You did have a success getting a bill out of committee today, if I'm not mistaken, that has to do with taking care of those who are on the developmentally disabled waiting list. This has been something you've attempted to do several sessions, and there's finally the political will to take the moral high ground in this instance and say, hey, if we're going to spend money on able-to-work adults, we need to make sure those who truly can't take care of themselves get adequate care. Tell us about this.
Well, you're right. This is my third session to run a bill that eliminates the DD wait list. There's over 3,000 folks, many of whom have been on there for well over a decade. Just some awful, sad situations, and they've been there waiting for services, and they've seen us rush out here and sign up able-bodied working-age adults on free insurance. And they're like, hey, wait, I've been waiting for 10 years to get services, and I'm always getting told, well, we don't have the money. Well, we seem to find the money to pay insurance companies. So, yeah, the political climate was right. Maybe the Lord just worked in the hearts of some legislators, and anyway, was able to get it passed it passed the House unanimously this time around. I guess they figure.
Oh, so the full chamber, it's out.
It just cleared the Senate Public Health.
Okay.
This morning, so it'll be voted on the floor by the Senate. I don't expect it to have any problems now, and I do consider that to be a huge win, because I know there's 3,000 something families that are over in the next 3 years going to be receiving services that they've been in desperate need of for a long time.
State Representative Josh Miller, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you, trying to do the fiscally conservative thing at this point, which is transition to fee-for-service traditional Medicaid. And it's just sad that we'd rather, participate in corporate welfare and just keep giving money to insurance companies. And, I think a lot of this, and I'll let you respond to this, I think a lot of this has to do with it being towards the end of session. You guys are not going to have constitutional power after next week, unless the governor calls a special session. And I just think there's a lot of people that just don't want to step up and make the hard decisions right now. The writing would be on the wall after the work requirements getting struck down. The writing would be on the wall to save us from budget turmoil and do your plan. But that would take a lot of work, a lot of reform right here at the end that's unplanned. And it just seems like the leadership doesn't have the stomach for it.
Well, I think you're right, Paul. I would say, it is sad. I feel like a fish out of water running a bill that does straight up Obamacare Medicaid expansion. I've been opposed to that from the word go whenever I first got in the legislature. But at this point, you've got to face reality and say, okay, it's obviously not going away unless Congress acts. How can the state do it the most efficient and affordable way possible? And so that's the reason I ran it. It would be work. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a tough deal. It would be a tough transition. But Representative Payton made the point in committee yesterday. The infrastructure's in place. I mean, DHS has already taken care of about 1 million people on traditional Medicaid. So adding 270,000 or whatever that basically we would have to send Medicaid cards to and say, tear up your Blue Cross card, use this now when you go to the doctor. I don't think it would be something that's going to take 10 years to put in place.
And your bill provided a year. It wouldn't go into effect till next July. So
that's right. And I think we gave DHS plenty of time. But, I guess the one positive we can take away from it is we've got the conversation started, which, it sucks when that's the only win you can get out of it. But I think enough folks now, and maybe we come back in 2 years after we've wasted another $1 billion on profit for the insurance companies. And there's only 2 insurance companies, both of whom have made large donations to certain constitutional officers' campaigns. But whether that has anything to do with anything or not,
certainly not.
I would be surprised if it did. But anyhow, it's awful. But I mean, that's literally what's going to happen. We're going to have wasted close to another $1 billion before the next regular session, and something can be done about this. But hey, what's $1 billion?
Yeah, that seems to be the mentality, an unfortunate mentality. State Representative Josh Miller, thanks so much.
Appreciate it, Paul. It's always a pleasure.
All right, that was State Representative Josh Miller. You heard him there, doing a really good job. Just making common sense decisions. Of course, just doesn't seem to sink in with everybody down there. There's not total agreement. Folks, the big news today, though, is that the House of Representatives this afternoon will be voting to increase your taxes when you purchase things online. You need to call them. You need to tell your state representative right now. You need to call them, reach out, say, vote no on the internet sales tax bill. Say, I don't care if there's corporate reform. You're going to raise taxes. And folks, here's the bottom line. It is a net tax increase until 2027. That is according to the government's own numbers. You tell your state rep today to vote no, because according to their own numbers, if they pass this bill, it's a net tax increase on the people until fiscal year 2027. Don't let them try to tell you that it's revenue neutral. We can't control what future legislatures do. We got to take a break. Tell them to vote no. Call your state representative right now. Vote no on the internet sales tax. Back in just a moment.
Lieutenant Governor, he welcomed us in his office. He come on in, guys, talk to me. Let's talk about gun rights. And we didn't have to pass a background check or submit a bio or wait a month. He welcomed us with open arms. What a difference a couple of years make.
Good. That's fantastic. We're talking with Tim Loggins. I tell you what's interesting. I was hearing a radio discussion the other day. I think I was listening to the Dave Ellswick show, and I was listening to Jan Morgan yesterday talking about. Did you follow that bump stock ban at all? And how people are supposed to turn in their bump stocks now. Have you heard about this?
I have and followed it. Personally, I don't own any weapons or bump stocks. I lost all of mine in a great flood a couple of years ago, so it doesn't affect me personally.
What's crazy is there's so many people who've lost their bump stocks. It's like I lost my bump stock. I was digging a hole in my backyard and I lost.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
How to grow government in this political climate is not a hard thing to do. That we have seen time and time again that with the right language, with the right people, with the right arguments, even if there's an argument out there that derails what the establishment wants, it seems like it's only temporary for the most part. It's only temporary. Just give us enough time and we will wear the committee down. Give us enough time and we will wear the chamber down. We will get the votes. We will get what we want. It's very, very frustrating. But listen, I'm just got to be honest with you right now. We have defeated the people with their, and the people's representatives 2 years ago defeated the internet sales tax bill. What is different about that today? They've tried to put some good things in there. The corporate reform, the corporate tax reform, those are good things, but not when you're going to take more money to the people. Taxes drive spending in this state, and they want more tax dollars, and they want to tax out-of-state sellers. Now, I don't care if the Supreme Court said you could do it or not. It's still wrong. The sovereign state of Arkansas has no bearing or authority, or shouldn't have any bearing or authority on some business owner in Missouri. It just doesn't make any sense. But our government thinks that it does. Folks, the bottom line is this. We are taxed we're taxed more than we can afford right now. We are 17th. We're the 17th worst place to live when it comes to taxes. And we're 44th in per capita income. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? Arkansas right now is just an average northeastern blue state. If you look at where we rank taxes wise, and you look at where we rank, I mean, it makes no sense that we would continue to raise taxes on the people. And that's what's happening. That's what's going to happen unless you call your state representative, email, text, do whatever you got to do. Make sure you let them know this is a net tax increase until 2027. I bet they'll address that point on the floor today. What do you think? I don't know where it is. There's a lot of people who, they just come up missing. It's interesting. It's like, but I find that interesting how there does. Obviously, I believe that yours was lost in a flood, Tim. But I do think it's interesting that there are some who are just saying, I'm not turning mine in. That's ridiculous, and they're saying no. And, for a long time, I've wondered if there was ever some sort of national gun confiscation, or they made it was like, hey, if you're caught with a gun you're not supposed to have, you're going to jail for 25 years, mandatory minimum sentence or something like that. Like how many of us would just say, okay, here's my gun? I don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, I really do think if that were to ever happen, people would, I think some would turn them in, but I don't think it'd be as many. I don't think it'd be as many as I thought at one time. You know what I mean?
Paul, this highlights how we win this fight for our Second Amendment. We cannot win it on the national level. We got to do it county by county, state by state, representative and senator by representative and senator, and we nullify federal overreach at the local level. I mean, we're at 16 states right now that are constitutional carry. Before the end of this session, we could be 22 states in the United States that are constitutional carry. That's how many states are taking up this legislation.
Wow.
You do it one state at a time. The feds cannot enforce gun control without the state's cooperation.
True.
And that's how we win this battle. We secure our rights by having these conversations, educating the public, and shifting that over to the window, dragging it back from the left where it's been misplaced and bringing it back to the center and say, hey, guys, this is a right. Mm-hmm. It's not a privilege. And you do that state by state, and we're winning that battle on the state level, Paul. Groups like, OK2A and Patriots Act 746 and Bama Carry, groups on the state level are winning. And by the way, that's why National Association of Gun Rights is in Arkansas, because the NRA doesn't get it. They want to compromise our rights away. And that's why the NRA is not relevant anymore in Arkansas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think, kind of back to the red flag law, that one red flag law that they have in Maryland, and that guy just got killed. I mean, the cops killed that guy. I think when stuff like that makes headlines, you realize just how unpractical going house to house and taking someone's firearms are. I mean, that was just one case where they used a red flag law to try to convict a guy before he's been charged with anything. So let's go take his guns away, even though he's done nothing wrong. And then the cops end up shooting the guy dead in his house. That's just,
Absolutely.
And if that's happening in Maryland, what do you think would happen in Arkansas? You know what I mean? Where on opening day of deer season, there's 300,000 people in trees.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the program today. So I followed this. I remember an instance during a special session a year or so ago where, and I remember this because I interviewed Jerry Cox on this, because there appeared to have been some legislation that was filed during the special session where they were trying to change, your right to trial by jury. If you were a nursing home owner, they're trying to sneak that into some legislation, and that was actually taken out at the time, I believe, and soundly defeated. And I believe this had to do with now indicted former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. This is what he was trying to do, but there was also a provision in that piece of legislation by the Arkansas Bankers Association where they wanted people to waive their right to a day in court when they signed a loan application. I'm sorry, when they signed the loan docs, the loan paperwork. And Mike Masterson has recently brought this to light, how that particular piece of legislation got through, and it affected a man by the name of Kenneth Tilley, of Boonville. He learned the hard way, Mike Masterson writes, over 7 years ago when he entered into a legal dispute over his 2010 loan from Malvern National Bank. At the resulting 2015 trial, circuit judge dismissed the jury. Tilley had signed his loan note without realizing how he'd also surrendered his fundamental right to a jury trial. Here to talk more about this is Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon's on the line. Joey, how are you this morning?
Morning. Doing great, Paul.
Glad that you could spend some time with us. What do you know about this Kenneth Tilley case?
I know that it's an injustice to Kenneth Tilley and anyone else who are signing these pre-dispute jury trial waivers. You know, what happens, Paul, is they shove a bunch of papers in front of you. There's unequal bargaining power. And before you know it, you've waived your right to a trial by jury. And that's exactly what happened to Kenneth Tilley, and he's paying a huge price. We have a procedure. It's called the Constitution. And our Constitution, Article 2, Section 7, says that the right to trial by jury shall remain inviolate. Now what we had, as you referred to, in a special session, no doubt, last year, Bob Ballinger, at that time Representative Bob Ballinger, and Senator Hutchinson ran this bill. 3 months after the Supreme Court had said what they did to Kenneth Tilley was unconstitutional, because a right to trial by jury can be waived, but it's only after litigation begins, when people know what their rights are, when they know how their rights have been violated. A person can do that. So for anyone to say that, oh, we're just trying to restore the people's right to contract, come on. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and that's what they were saying at the time, the people's right. But this particular language, was this specifically put in there by the Bankers Association, by Jeremy Hutchinson, by Bob Ballinger, because the Supreme Court said that Kenneth Tilley should be able to take the bank to court?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They drafted a provision, and the provision said, this was after the Supreme Court held what they did to Mr. Tilley. And I don't represent Mr. Tilley, but I see an injustice here. And this Senator Stubblefield's bill that's before the legislature now, we're trying to get that through the process. But last year in special session in 2018, they drafted a provision that said a written provision in a contract to borrow money in which the parties agree to waive their respective rights to a trial by jury is valid and enforceable. Well, most everyday citizens that go in and sign this paperwork don't read the fine print. And there's not a knowing waiver of your right to trial by jury. It's not negotiable with the bank. So why do they want this so bad? It's just another special interest attack on the right to trial by jury in Arkansas. We've seen it over and over and over again.
You know, what I find interesting about this, okay, with specifically this case of Kenneth Tilley, so, you know, he deals with this in 2015. His attorney appealed to the Arkansas Supreme Court, arguing whether it was legally acceptable for a citizen to waive constitutional rights before any conflict between parties were ever anticipated. In 2017, the Supreme Court ruled such pre-dispute waivers of rights were unenforceable. So they're saying, okay, so you can sue. The High Court determined the right to choose trial by jury is a fundamental protected right by the state's Constitution. And then, after the Supreme Court's ruling, the Arkansas Bankers Association headed to the legislature to find sympathetic ears of former Senator Jeremy Hutchinson and Bob Ballinger. They agreed to carry the bill, and that would satisfy the Supreme Court's ruling. So, I mean, I find that incredible that we have one man's case, and as soon as they passed this language, all of a sudden now he can no longer sue the bank again. So he's right back where he was originally. Is that true?
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars later, he's right back without the right to trial by jury. Gosh. And had to go before a bench trial. Let's not forget that you mentioned it early on. When they came back in the legislative session, in a special session, I mean, why are they considering this particular bill for the powerful banking association in special session? Well, because it was not only about banks. The nursing homes were behind this also. The powerful special interest nursing homes were behind this. They wanted these pre-dispute jury waivers in their contracts also. But as you said, Jerry Cox understood, and he fought against this because, again, it was another price tag on the value of life, and they wanted folks to, we know what happens. Grandma breaks her hip. She's in the hospital. She needs to go into a nursing home, and they have the family sign these pre-dispute waivers that are buried in the contract to get people into nursing homes. So it's all about special interest, and we've got to hold the right to trial by jury inviolate, undisturbed. We can't having legislators passing these laws for special interest that undo the right to trial by jury. And that's what happened to Mr. Tilley. He's fought. He went to a bench trial. He appealed it up because he did not get a jury trial. Supreme Court ruled for him, and within months, certain legislators were talking to fellow legislators in a special session to take away his rights, and they've done it up until this point. And that's why I'm very, very happy that Senator Stubblefield is running this bill to restore the right to trial by jury for not only Mr. Tilley, but every Arkansas citizen who signs these unknowingly and non-negotiable the rights away.
You know, I kind of see a parallel here. You know, if you want to buy a house, most people are going to have a mortgage. They're going to have to go through a bank. Now, I don't know what Kenneth Tilley's original legal dispute with Malvern National Bank was. Do you know what it was, Joey?
Well, he tried to borrow money, and eventually there was a problem with the way that the money was loaned. I don't know all the details.
Okay.
But I know that he felt like that he was defrauded.
Okay.
And he wanted to enforce his right to trial by jury, and they said, "Oh no, you waived that right." And he said, "What?
Yeah.
How did I waive?"
That's fat. And so whatever the dispute is, we all know banks can be powerful, and banks can, make you feel like the little guy a lot of times. But it's interesting though. I kind of feel like this idea that you can't sue the bank that you've done business with is their argument. I find that very frustrating. I find it a similar argument to the way we can't sue the state of Arkansas now because of a Supreme Court ruling saying that there's now sovereign immunity and that the state can't be a defendant in her courts. It's very similar in a way, except, the bank these are private institutions, and the private institutions that have now used the government to craft the laws to their advantage and against the consumer. Really, this is a consumer protection issue, if anything.
Well, I mean, you can still sue them, but you just have to go before the judge. You don't get a jury before your peers, like our founding fathers thought was so important. As James Madison said, trial by jury in civil cases is as essential to secure the liberty of the people as any one of the pre-existent rights of nature. And what's happened, the banks they argued as recently as last week, we're having to spend too much money and too much time for us to go before a jury. I mean, is that the crisis? And then they say that if we have a right to trial by jury for these consumers, the interest rates are going to go up. What? Are you kidding? That argument has been made, that it costs too much, that interest rates are going to go up, that these outside conglomerate banks won't do business in Arkansas. I mean, we can't give up our rights for special interest or the next crisis that's ginned up, because that's what's happened in every single case, Paul. Whether it's this big tort reform, when they wanted to put a $500,000 price tag on life, I mean, it's because, we want to protect doctors. We want their insurance rates to go down. Right. It's about profits of insurance companies, and we know that, period.
So I do want to mention before we go, Senator Gary Stubblefield, again, he has filed SB 558. It's an effort to repeal Act 13 of 2018, which was in that special session, and to restore the constitutional right to trial by jury. And that would have restored Tilley's remanded trial in line with the Supreme Court's original decision back in 2017. Joey, do you have any update on that piece of legislation? We're nearing the end of session.
We are, and Senator Stubblefield is going to run that before the Senate Judiciary Committee the next time it meets. I think it was going to be run yesterday, but I think one of the senators was unavailable and it had to be out of state. But it ran last week and it fell one vote short. It ran late at night and one of the senators had to leave early. Yeah. I think it was in good faith. And I think that senator said he would support Senator Stubblefield's bill to restore the right to trial by jury. So hopefully, and I hope people will call their senators and tell them to restore the right to trial by jury and do away with these pre-dispute jury trial waiver. We already have arbitration, which they've shoved down our throat, where we sign these arbitration agreements and give up our right to trial by jury. That's wrong. We should never be forced to give up our right to trial by jury just because we're doing business with nursing homes, businesses, banks, or anybody else. Our Constitution is too important for that. Our constitutional rights must be defended at every turn.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Tilley needs the support of the Arkansas people. So I encourage everyone listening to this, call your senator and tell them that Senator Stubblefield's bill, Senate Bill 558, is a heck of a bill, and we need it.
I agree. Joey McCutcheon, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much. We could all be the next Kenneth Tilley. We need to remember that. Joey, you have a great weekend, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty.
Have a great weekend.
Yes, folks, I mean, there's still a lot of time left. I know it's, less than a week, but you need to call. You need to just if you got something, if you're hearing something on this program that you think needs to happen and it hasn't yet, you need to call your senator and you need to call your state rep. They're voting on the internet sales tax today. If you're just joining us, welcome to the program. They're voting on the internet sales tax today in the House of Representatives. This is a net tax increase according to DFNA's own numbers. Now, if you've been listening to the show, you know that we played for you audio of DFNA not wanting, and I've tried to figure out how to summarize this, but DFNA doesn't want their own numbers to be added up and calculated. Okay? But if you look at DFNA's own numbers, this is a net tax increase on the people of Arkansas until 2027. This bill alone is a net tax increase on the people until 2027, according to Department of Finance Administration's own numbers. So, if you're a Republican and you are for less taxes on the people, then you can vote against this bill. If you are a Republican and you maybe you've bought this bogus line that for purposes of fairness, we need to have an internet sales tax. Why is it not revenue neutral? I tell you why. The governor's it's already in his budget. Right? It's already in his budget. I'm telling you, they keep coming back to the people. And if you're a Republican and you vote for this bill, you don't need to feel good about it. There's all kinds, first of all, the Conduit scorecard is going to come out at some point. And I can promise you this bill is a huge one because, this is something that was supported by the establishment 2 years ago and defeated by the House of Representatives. There were enough conservatives that said, no, enough's enough. We're not going to raise taxes on the people. And so, you know what the establishment did this time? They said, okay, we'll give you the bill. We'll put even new language to raise even more revenue, and we'll put some corporate tax reform in there to sweeten the pie. So, the Chamber of Commerce is now on board, putting pressure on these guys. The Municipal League is putting pressure on these guys. If there's ever a day in this 92nd General Assembly that the folks need to call and the representatives need to hear from their people, this is the day. Email, call, text, do everything you can. Call your state representative. Tell them to vote no. Tell them this is a net tax increase according to DFNA's own numbers. It does not lie. It's their own financial impact statement. It's their own numbers. It's a net tax increase until 2027. No one cares about what their taxes are going to be in 2027. That's preposterous. We care what our taxes are going to be July. That's when they'll start collecting this internet tax, in July of 2019. So a couple of months away. Republicans need to stand up. They need to look at what the platform says. They need to know that cutting taxes for economic development is a good thing. Don't listen to State Representative Dan Douglas when he goes to the floor today and he tells you that this bill is an economic development bill. It will save our Main Street businesses. We can either do it, save our Main Street businesses, or we can just say the hell with it. Don't listen to Dan Douglas. I'm serious. How is it an economic development bill to take more money from the people when the platform says, and you know what Dan Douglas is going to say? He's going to say, the platform of the Republican Party talks about fairness and equal protection under the law. And he's going to say, it's not fair that a Main Street business has to pay tax and people don't have to pay it when there's running on the internet. And we need to track internet purchases, whether you shop at VictoriaSecret.com or Zappos.com, or I wear Wrangler blue jeans, all right? I wear Wrangler blue jeans. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. You're going to listen to the Republican that's now the only Republican down there that's pro-choice and pro-assisted suicide? I think Dan Douglas has a big credibility problem at this point, and he in taxes, economic development, or economic freedom. I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. And not to mention, you can poke holes in his argument all day long if you'll just realize that having a Main Street business and having an internet business are two completely different things. I can set up an internet business tomorrow. I can't set up a brick and mortar business tomorrow. Not to mention, what point is it? I mean, why do they think that a business in Illinois should have to worry about paying taxes for Arkansas local communities so they can pave their streets? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Now we are going to be paying the tax. I mean, I can tell you that. DFNA's financial statement is so flawed, they're claiming that this tax increase will generate $11 million for cities and counties across the state. Yet, the city of Little Rock last year estimated that if they had the internet tax, they alone would get $10 million. So DFNA's statement, there's something really dishonest about it. And I can tell you exactly why they're so underestimating their numbers. That's because they know that they don't want a giant figure attached to this that's publicized so that people realize how much money they're being taken from. They have added language into this bill that DFNA has not scored. Now, they may lie about that, but I'm sure that they have the same financial impact statement for a draft piece of legislation that didn't have the third-party marketplace sellers in it, which is going to generate a massive amount of money for the state. How can you have the same financial impact statement for two completely different bills? How does that happen? You've got many ways to vote no against this. You don't have all the information. DFNA's lied to you, right? It's a tax increase on the people. That's against the Republican Party platform. The Republican Party platform talks about economic development by giving the people more money, not taking more of it from them. Well, it will save our small Main Street businesses. No, it won't. If you're a Main Street business and you're struggling, giving more money to the government isn't going to suddenly make people come to your store. They're still going to continue shopping on the internet because it's amazingly convenient and it's a good thing to do. Call your state representative right now, throughout the day. Email, call, text, whatever you have to do, and tell them to be a Republican, be a platform Republican, and vote against an internet sales tax. Even if it's got the corporate tax reform in there as a carrot to try to make people vote for this thing. It's not revenue neutral until 2027. It's a net tax increase. So sorry, your bill's not good enough. You might have tried to get me on board with the corporate tax relief, but all of these tax cuts take place in, years 2 or 3. All of the tax increases they're passing this session, they start collecting in July or October of this year. Come on. The people we can't afford this. We can't afford this, and they're going to take it from us by force anyway, instead of admitting that they themselves can't afford these massive welfare programs, and they need to reprioritize some of that money and only let those who are truly needy have it, and then pay for our roads with cuts and savings. But they refuse to do it. They refuse to be fiscal conservatives. Instead, they are tax and spend liberals. I thought we voted those guys out. They had control for 138 years. The ideology's still in control. They've been in control for 148 years now. That's right. We've had Republicans down there making gains for almost 10 years now. I want you to think about that. We have to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
You know, with that know how to use high-powered rifles. You know what I mean? I guess when you really think of the sheer numbers, it's just not practical to even think about. I mean, I know that's what the left wants to do, but it's just not something that would work out well, I don't think.
Well, I want to say this, Paul. I encourage the listeners to get involved locally with their sheriff's races. You know, there's a sheriff in Colorado that said, "I'll go to jail in my own jail before I enforce red flag laws."
Yes.
Talk to your sheriff, and if your sheriff's not willing to make that constitutional stand, replace him. It's that simple.
Yeah.
We need sheriffs that exercise their full authority and stand up to their oath. And right now in Arkansas, we probably got maybe 10 or 15 that will, maybe, out of 75.
Yeah.
We need to be having that conversation on the county level.
Wow.
And I also want to thank, Senator Linda Collins last session, back last October, Representative Dwight Tosh. They allowed us.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody out there listening. If you like the stuff that you're hearing, and what I mean by that, you may not like the stuff you're hearing. I mean, if you're a limited government conservative, you're probably not going to like the information from some of the stuff. I mean, there's some good stuff, but there's also some other stuff. This is pretty frustrating. But if you understand that you're not going to get this perspective anywhere else in the statewide media apparatus, then you need to tell your friends about it. Please, I would encourage you, conduitnews.com. Send your friends there. Send them to the radio show. Tell them to get the podcast if they're not up at 6, if they're not up by 7. Tell them to get the podcast. It's very easy. It's on iTunes. It's on SoundCloud. And I would ask that the listeners, especially those of you who have been with me for this whole time, I'm going on 10 years now on the air, that you would tell everyone in your sphere of influence just as a favor to me, to listen to the show and to get the podcast and to subscribe to the YouTube page, to watch us on Facebook when they get to their desks at work. If they're not up as early as the show's on now from 6 to 8, I would very, very much appreciate that. You guys are patriots out there, and you're helping us build a liberty machine, and we're going to get there. We're going to produce more freedom for the people of Arkansas. You just got to continue to show these politicians the mirror and show them what they're really doing, not what they say on the campaign trail, but what they're really doing. Call your state representative, tell them to vote no on the internet sales tax.